It's week 11, which means the final trades of the season are happening now. Learn who to buy low with our favorite down the stretch sleepers. All this and more. It's the IBT podcast coming right at you.
I've been going dummy, out of bounds, putting on a clinic. Stick around, carrots in my hardware. KC, caught him in the crosshair. Look at me, been the guy calling Mr. MVP. Keep your ass on the bench by my MPC. Earn my stripes like I fix this league. Your dog's on the turf, my dog's in the street. You can find me somewhere in between. Never a dull moment like a movie scene. About to do the ops like I did this beat. Let them keep talking RG3. Coming to you live. This is the In Between Fantasy Football Podcast.
All right. It is Tuesday, November 12th, 2024. This is the In Between Fantasy Football Podcast, your place for both a refreshing and feel-good take on fantasy football and NFL gambling. We're on the precipice of week number 11, where we see what fantasy teams are here for the long haul and who's heading home. I'm your host, Seth Woolcock. Vibes extremely high in my household. Just got engaged over the weekend, so hoping we can carry that momentum into some fantasy dubs. Tonight, I'm joined by a big business, light ranching son of a bitch. This guy could probably name every damn cornerback in the league. Eric Romoff, what's up, Tex?
Man, first and foremost, everyone out in the chat, show some love to Seth. Let's clap it up for Seth and Katie, making it official. Big weekend for the literal and figurative IBT family. And like you said, week 11, man, we are deep into double digits now. Playoffs are right around the corner. This is where we really got to position ourselves, right? We got to fine tune those rosters. We got to make sure that everything is in place for a deep playoff run. This is nut cutting time, boys.
Absolutely. It is nut cutting time for sure. We're also joined by the intern, senior communications major at the Purdue University, fantasy football analyst and content creator, Big Ripper, Will Star Lipper. Happy week 11, pal.
Yeah, I'm just in the phase where I'm complaining about points scored against me, trying to scrape into the playoffs, even though I'm a top scorer in the league. And yeah, it's not the best few weeks for me recently for fantasy football, but
We're here. We truck on, man. And my nickname in my home league is Shit Win Seth, because whenever I play you, you're going to have your worst week. And it just keeps on rolling. I won this past week in my big money league with about, I think, 100 points. So it was one of those weeks, though, man. It's been tough. And we're going to make sure people are getting set down the stretch, getting some sleepers, trading. Have all your guys' trade deadlines passed? Because mine haven't. I have a lot of leagues still rolling here. I had one that just ended this past week. I was like, damn, that's way too early. But excited to have both of you guys on the program tonight. Pack program for y'all as well. Rest of season, sure thing, sleepers. Then we'll get to our In the Scope. From the forum, we'll be taking your questions here in the chat and over on the Fantasy Football Advice Network. Good news, our feel-good headlines from around the internet. We're also joined by a man who pulls the strings for the IBT podcast, behind-the-scenes producer, Yinzer, Ginger, Kyle Scott. What's up, Jim?
How's it going, everybody? Congratulations, Seth.
Appreciate it.
I can say it's been football season for a few weeks now. It is finally football weather outside. If you ask me, crisp, cool, dry. Your knuckles get a little bloody out there these days. So wear some gloves and have some fun. Hopefully you win something in some fantasy football.
Absolutely. Shout out to the IBT family as well. Thanks for all the support this season, both here on the IBT podcast and all over the channel. People have been way too kind to me on the internet lately. I see it. I appreciate it. We all do here at IBT. Albert in the chat. Good evening, IBT. Thank you, Albert. I appreciate that, man. Ben saying congrats. Thank you, Ben. I appreciate you as well and all your work over here at IBT. And yeah, it was a cool day, man. Went out, had a great time, Eric, and at the same time, Penn State gets a big dub. We had a great NASCAR weekend, so vibes are high right now. Like I know our guy Will is losing, but I feel like besides that, vibes are high, right?
Man, vibes are definitely high, but as a seasoned veteran of this marriage game, you need not mention the Penn State win in the same breath as to why your weekend was good, because you also proposed to your eventual spouse, right? Like You gotta be a few steps ahead in this new role as husband Seth.
Good point. Good point. Good point. I will learn as we go. That's what we do here at the IBT podcast. So let's go ahead and turn the page here, guys, with a little short things, sleepers of the week.
It's the short thing. Sleepers of the week.
All right, sure thing, sleepers of the week. We're looking for players that we can potentially acquire on a discount. Maybe even some people are going to get a little upset with some of these players. Maybe they're out there on the wire as well. But Will, I'm going to turn the page to you first, man. Who is someone that you think could be a sleeper and a difference maker down the stretch?
I am excited about George Pickens because, we saw some flashes during the first, 5, 6, 7 games, whatever it was with Justin Fields. And now we're seeing it with Russell Wilson, right? We have 2 20-point games and a decent 12-point game where he had a whole bunch of stuff called back. And it feels like that happens every game. But the reason I was excited about Russell Wilson coming for George Pickens and Deontay leaving the team is because everything opens up and Russell Wilson and Pickens both specialize in the deep ball, and we're seeing that connection happen. But along with that, it's the schedule. They have the Ravens twice, who give up the most fantasy points to receivers. They have the Browns twice, who give up the 5th most fantasy points to receivers. They have the Bengals, who are kind of middle of the pack in that aspect, but we know that that's not a legitimate defense. You have a pretty easy schedule all the way up until the Chiefs in the fantasy championship. So I think this is going to be a really big stretch for George Pickens, and it could be a second half of the year breakout.
Hats off to you and everyone who defended the move to Russell Wilson. I was really on the Justin Fields bandwagon, but what Russell has been able to do to unlock GP down the field has been sensational. He's finding him in the end zone. He's treating him like a number 1 target and giving him really good balls to come down with. And did you guys see that catch on Sunday? That was immaculate. I mean, this is peak GP right now, and I think you can go out and get him. It's going to be a little tough to acquire him, I think, Eric, because he has had some good games, but I really like George Pickens down the stretch, especially with that schedule. That's insane.
Yeah, all of the Steelers' remaining divisional games are still in front of them, and we've got like 6 weeks of the season left, or 8 weeks, and they sprinkle in like the Chiefs and the Eagles for good measure, right? So kind of a wild stretch, but all pretty interesting matchups overall. The thing that you mentioned that's kind of tricky, I broadly agree that I'm very bullish on the direction the arrow is pointing for George Pickens and this Russell Wilson-led version of the Steelers offense. He's thrown to the end zone, like balls that land into the end zone, 11 times in like 2.5 games. Like, dude is just pushing the ball down the field. That's exactly what you're looking for in terms of a quarterback that leads to fantasy production. Where I disagree with you is I don't think you're going to be able to go out and get him, right? Like, the George Pickens manager right now feels like they've caught lightning in a bottle, and they're not going to let him go for anything close to a reasonable price. So either you drafted him or you're waiting until next year in my book.
Okay. I just saw him go in a league of mine last week. I think it was like a CeeDee Lamb and something back, and they split CeeDee and something for, I think, George Pickens and Josh Jacobs. So like they got a pretty good haul back with them, but they had to give up CeeDee Lamb. Like, you are going to have to move some capital. You're going to move some capital for sure, but there are guys like CeeDee Lamb who have a lot of name value out there, and their outlook ain't so great right now. So I think it's something definitely to consider. Eric, who do you like as potential sleeper down the stretch?
Well, this was a much spicier take when I put it into the sheet before he was promptly activated off of IR, and that's Isiah Pacheco. There is not clear reporting about when he will actually suit up and take the field again, but opening the window starts a 21-day countdown clock where he has to be back out there and activated, or he will go to season-ending IR. So at some point in the next week or 2 or maybe 3, we can expect to see him out there. And the reason why I think that he is an absolute difference maker down the stretch is really more about utilization, right? Kansas City currently 7th in the league at about 30 rushing attempts per game. They run the ball a ton. And Kareem Hunt, for however inefficient and lackluster and kind of slow and lost that he looks out there, he is getting all of the work in that
It's
backfield. And I
insane.
fully expect that work to be picked up and handed directly over to a much more capable Isiah Pacheco when he returns, right? So, if that news about him activating hadn't dropped in the middle point of this day, I think you might have been able to try to pull off some sneaky moves and go out and get Pacheco for a little bit of a lower price tag. But ultimately, if the Pacheco manager is willing to listen, I think that we're looking at a potential, league winner type of stretch run out of Isiah Pacheco.
Will, how do you think this backfield will be split up once Pacheco's back? Do we assume he's going to retake a workhorse role, 3-down skill set role, but or do you think Kareem Hunt is still seeing 40-50% of snaps?
Yeah, that's the only question mark I have with this. I personally have Pacheco waiting to activate him into my starting lineup. If he can come back sooner rather than later and get going against Buffalo, Carolina, and the Raiders, who are pretty bad against the run, then I love this take even more. But in terms of value though, too, I think there are going to be plenty of people out there that think that this is Kareem Hunt's backfield, and you can get some good value from him there, which is why I love the call. But yeah, it could be a thing where they kind of ease him back into it, and he's not really that big sleeper until kind of the playoffs. But I'm absolutely in on it.
Gotcha. Mute it.
Meet the Goat. We're gonna grab your question here in just a little bit. Hang with us. We appreciate you tuning in, buddy. I'm gonna go ahead and get to my first trade target of the night, and it is Xavier Worthy. I think he's someone who could be a sleeper down the stretch for everybody. I get that the Chiefs haven't been using him as well as they were earlier in the season so far, but I think they got to get him going if they want to repeat this championship, boys. And he's the most explosive player on this team per Fantasy Pros strength of schedule tool. The Chiefs have one of the top rest of season schedules for wide receivers. His snaps probably shouldn't suffer when Juju returns. We know Juju's going to play that more slot, Rashid Rice role. Xavier Worthy is still going to be on the outside there. And while his targets have been down the past 2 weeks, just 6 combined in that stretch, he had 8 in both weeks 7 and 8, and he also averaged 1 carry per game throughout the entire year so far. So I know it's been tough for him as of lately. He scored 1 combined fantasy point over the past 2 weeks, but I think you can go out and get him for nothing. And he's someone I think you can throw in your flex down the stretch, and he gives you a shit ton of upside every time he's there. He has no floor. That's kind of what you're expecting there. But I think that floor will come because he's getting the targets and they got to unlock him at some point. So any love from either of you for Xavier Worthy, or do you just guys think it's like a 2025 thing we're hoping for at this point? Well, you're muted, bro.
I'm not personally too excited about him, and it might just be kind of a little biased because I was out on him before the season. I just kind of always viewed him as a gadget guy, as like a better version of like McCole Hardman, and I got a lot of shit for that as pre-draft takes. But to be honest, I think he is just a better McCole Hardman. You have Pacheco coming back, so you're going to have Pacheco and Hunt getting check downs and Pirine. DeAndre Hopkins trade, obviously we saw how that went 2 weeks ago. Juju's coming back. He even thrived in the slot when they gave him the opportunity. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he had a couple of spike weeks here, but I think you're also going to have to worry about those 2-point games. I think he's going to be very touchdown dependent, and this offense isn't a top 10 scoring offense by any means. The matchups aren't beautiful or anything. So I don't think this is a guy I would ever really trust in my lineup if I can help it.
Eric, you got any more love for Worthy and the upside he could have down the stretch? Super valid points, though, Will. Super valid, honestly. Like, I don't know. I just think I'm like playing this rookie wide receiver got to break out, right? Like, it's got to happen, Eric, at some point, right?
Does it? There's a lot of rookie wide receivers that the breakout just kind of never really comes for, right? So I don't think that we can say that just because it hasn't happened yet, that it's definitively going to happen at some point in the future. I'm a bit closer to Will's take on Xavier Worthy in particular. I didn't have the pre-draft bias that he alluded to. I was very hopeful for what he could be in this offense. I got to see a lot of him just up the road in Austin, and even in that first game, right? Like they were using him in a variety of different ways, and it gave me a ton of hope for how they might deploy him. But that was the exception. They have not used him in any sort of creative way to that extent, really, at any point since then. And the advanced metrics behind it don't look great. He's got the lowest success rate in terms of Kansas City receivers when Patrick Mahomes is targeting him. He is one of only 2 players with a negative EPA per play when being targeted in from the arm of Patrick Mahomes. So it hasn't gone great, right? You know, if you're talking about him as like a player to acquire, I think you can get him pretty cheap. Most people,
Well, based off what you guys are saying, yeah, I think you can get him for a pile of shit right now, honestly.
pretty close to it, yeah. And the people that drafted him, you know, thinking that they were getting, you know, the potential wide receiver 1 in this offense. You know, the upside is there, right? Like he's going to have a few weeks where he finds the end zone or he hits that big play. And, you know, he's pushing 14, 16, 20 fantasy points. But the weeks where he's not doing that, I mean, it would make me feel very uncomfortable to be looking at a 1 or a 2 in my flex spot as we get into the playoff run.
I feel like I've been taking 6 and 7s there all year, so I'm willing to risk it at some point. I mean, fuck, Will's willing to. He would trade Xavier Worthy right now for probably a Chipotle gift card. So, I mean, I mean, yeah, I just think you can get him for so cheap. I'm gonna go out. I'm gonna get him. We'll see how it plays out down the stretch. But yeah, let's look back at this. I'm not gonna place any wager on this though, because last time I did, I owed Eric like a $60 shot, which was not awesome. But yeah,
it was like $28. Don't worry.
Okay, but I bought you 2 because I was hospitable. But but I feel like next time for sure, like. We'll have a draft bet next year. That'll be the next bet. We'll get back. We'll get back to it. We'll put a little beer bet on it. All right, though, guys. Let's go ahead and let's shift gears down into the scope. Let's talk waivers after they run. Who we're targeting.
I have the targets in my sights.
Requesting permission to engage.
In the scope.
All right. So in the scope's not always the most fun segment. But we hit fucking dingers. Eric, just last week, he said, hey, before the rush, maybe go pick up Audric Estime. And Audric Estime, he is the top running back on the mainstream this week. There's him, there's Trey Benson, there's Gus Edwards, Cam Akers. But Audric Estime, Eric, take a bow, my friend. Great call on it. I mean, he had how many carries last week? 11 to, I think Javonte had 2 or 3.
Audric Estime had 14. Jaleel McLaughlin and Javonte Williams combined for 3. And actually, Audric Estime was doing a little bit of work in pass pro too. I was watching that film back. You know, he was kind of touted as this like ham and egger, you know, 3 yards in a cloud of dust type of archetype, but he was holding his own, right? I think that's part of the reason why we see him taking the field a little bit more. You know, pass pro is the thing that is usually the slowest on-ramp for rookie running backs. But yeah, I mean, I certainly didn't think we were going to be immediately following my in the scope call with him picking up like 90% of the work. But, you know, the reason why we do these things is that, you know, when it comes to pass, you now have a guy that would cost you a quarter of your fab or more to go out and acquire.
I hate myself. I picked him up and I dropped him for Isaac Guerendo. Oh.
Ooh.
And then I dropped Isaac Guerendo then for Demarcus Robinson because I need.
Do you have any other third string running backs on your roster, or was it just Guerendo that you had?
It was just Guerendo I had eyes for. Yeah, Will. Do you think this like estimate thing was just a 1 week thing? They kind of wanted to see what they had because Sean Payton's done this before, where we've seen Troy Franklin run out there and have a shit ton of snaps. Vele, he's gone up and down in usage throughout the year. Like, do you think this is sticky?
Yeah, it is hard to trust it with Sean Payton's history, even just what he's done this season. But I mean, he's also voiced multiple times all season wanting to get Estime involved. I just think it could easily be like back to normal and then get him involved again. Like, yeah, it's going to be hard to be. And I mean, that's why he's a 1% owned waiver pickup that just had a pretty good week. But it's also, not too excited about the offense, the very minimal, even though he's playing on pass pro, I still don't think he's got too much receiving upside with Jaleel and Javonte back there. It's hard to get excited about like a first and second down guy and a tough offense with a coach that's all over the place, I feel like.
You'll get a good six if he does maintain this role. Like, count him in for probably 5 to 6 points a game. That's, if he gets in the end zone, he could potentially maybe get you 13 to 15. But definitely, I don't see too many 20 burgers coming in his way unless he falls in the end zones a couple times. But hey, man, the Broncos haven't been half bad this year, and 1.1% roster. So Eric, good on you. You were in the slim 1% that was in on him. So good on you. If you need a quarterback on the mainstream, are you considering Russell Wilson? Like, he's really the only name sub 50% rostered that's getting any buzz out there on the internet right now.
I am, yeah. I mean, he's had 2 top 10 finishes in his 3 starts, and like I just talked about with Pickens' schedule, Wilson has the same one against these rough AFC North secondaries. I'm currently already put in a waiver for him to try and start him over Darnold this week in one of my leagues. I think he's got some upside.
Okay. Looking at some of the mainstream wide receivers, we have Ricky Pearsall, Quentin Johnston, Xavier Legette, Jalen McMillan, and then that old sneaky son of a bitch, Marquise Valdes-Scantling. He's back. I swear to God, this guy just won't go away. He's like the clap, man. He just keeps coming back and back and back. He's now with the Saints. He's 1.7% rostered. Eric, can I interest you in this wide receiver that I just compared to an STD?
No, and I think you're probably being generous to compare him to the clap. It's kind of a head scratcher. It feels like we're in a simulation where MVS is a alleged top waiver pickup this deep into the 2024 season.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, there's even reporting today from head coach or interim head coach Darren Rizzi that Chris Olave is not out for the season. There's some potential that we're going to be looking at Rashid Shaheed making his return before long. Even Bub Means, right? Like there are guys that when they are even close to healthy are going to edge out Marquez Valdes-Scantling for his time on the field. So yeah, if you somehow were rostering and starting him last week, congratulations, right? Like you pulled the inside straight, but he doesn't really have a spot on reasonable rosters out there.
Will guys like Xavier Legette, Quentin Johnston, Ricky Pearsall, they're not available in any of my leagues for the most part. However, they are available on ESPN in over 50% of leagues. Who's the one you like the most out of that group?
Yeah, he's not owned. None of these guys are owned outside of MVS in my leagues, or all of them are owned outside of MVS, who obviously I mean, I'm in 2 competitive leagues that don't even have waivers. It's just first come, first serve because we've been at that for 10 years and it's like our biggest league. So, but no one even batted an eye on MVS when he was going off. So, I don't know. I'm not too excited about Legette just because the offense is going to be the offense. And once Thielen comes back, it's going to be kind of crowded, pretty touchdown dependent as well. But honestly, with the way the Chargers have been playing, I think Quentin probably has the most week-to-week upside. I mean, he's had a couple of big games this season. Not like I'm going to trust him or anything like that, but out of these guys, he would probably be the one I would stab at.
Eric, you like Ricky Pearsall, I know. You called him out as potential league winner a few weeks ago. I imagine he's your favorite on this list, and I am with Will. I do like the upside QJ is bringing each and every week now that he finally figured out he does in fact have hands. But I think you like Pearsall probably the best.
Yeah, that's probably fair to say. Honestly, it's Pearsall and Quentin Johnston in kind of a tier onto themselves, right? The thing with Ricky Pearsall is he was very much so purpose designed and drafted to come in and play the Brandon Ayuk role. Obviously, he's not going to have 40 or 50-yard touchdown catches every single week, but having a defined role that's going to secure his playing time, that's going to mean that he's going to have catches and routes and balls that are schemed open for him, right? Like these are things that are kind of hard to find on the waiver wire this deep into the season.
Mhm.
So if he's out there, I'm certainly gobbling him up.
Okay, some of the mainstream tight end targets: Mike Gesicki, Taysom Hill, Dawson Knox. Dawson Knox rostered in just 99% of leagues, or unrostered 99% of leagues, excuse me. I don't really know the stats. Dalton Kincaid, it is Tuesday, so once we get a more clearer picture on that, I think we'll see what Knox's potential volume is. Taysom Hill continues to be, if you want like a secondary piece in the Saints offense, I think he's probably your best option, even though I'm not sure if anyone wants that at this point. Mike Gesicki, I mean, he probably should be rostered everywhere now that Eric Alt Jr., a guy we highlighted in this segment a couple weeks ago, is out for the season. Mike Gesicki's fucking eating those targets up like it's Thanksgiving dinner. Let's get to the in the scope targets here, though. Eric, who do you like after waivers run? Who's someone you are targeting to pick up for free if you're low on fab, if you're just trying to conserve it for down the stretch?
Yeah, a lot of this will speak to sort of the strategy that we shift gears into at this point of the season in fantasy, and that is really looking for some of these league winning upside type of players. You're no longer really speculating for a guy that you can plug into your flex spot and get 4 or 5 points out of. And for me, one of your favorites, Seth, Blake Corum. Hasn't really done anything to earn this attention quite yet. But what we know to be true, in a Sean McVay offense, whoever the starting running back is going to get run into the ground. So he is on the short list of running backs that I would consider as an elite stash, because if that opportunity opens up, he's immediately going to vault into 22, 25 touches a game, akin to what Kyron Williams is doing, who, is, I think, running back 5 or 6 on points per game. And all of his advanced metrics are pretty pedestrian or worse, right? So like you plug a guy like Corum into this system, give him that kind of volume, and you too could be looking at a top 10 running back.
Every time I see Blake Corum just get a touch or just a snap, it's like a hit of dopamine right to the fucking brain. And honestly, I kind of hate Sean McVay for him doing me like this and just drafting one of the more exciting running back prospects in the 2025 class and then just not using him for the entire first half of this season. So that's an absolute bummer. Will, you like Corum at all? Do you think he's a guy worth stashing? I don't have any more Corum. I'll be honest with you guys. I had him in about every league, and I cut him about a month and a half ago. So, Will, would you consider picking him back up if he's out there?
Yeah, I agree with the LA Rams running back role being as beautiful as it is when you get the opportunity, and if it depends on your roster construction, if you can afford to roster a handcuff that you're stashing, but it's kind of similar to my thoughts. Now, the Cardinals running backs aren't as beautiful as what the Rams running backs do, but I think it's comparable to Trey Benson, where you can't predict injuries or bet on it, but you can look at the history and see that Kyron's a small guy with some injury history. I don't think James Conner has played more than 13 games in a full season.
Yeah.
So those are the types of things I look at right here when I'm trying to stash guys. So.
It's a good call. Yeah, good call. You got Daco in the chat saying, is that the Jaguars starting quarterback Mac Jones in the red shirt? Have you ever been called that? Have you ever been called Mac Jones before?
I get that. Yeah, I get that a lot in my TikTok comments. Yeah.
Really? Wow. Nice. Nice. I got someone once tagged me. They're like, who is this on Twitter? It was the Mac Jones Jaguars picture. And they said, I looked like Mac Jones. I'm like, I don't look like Mac Jones at all. You do look like Mac Jones though. So yeah, good on you, Will. Good on you. I'm seeing some more questions coming in. We're going to get to those in just a minute, but I do want to get to a few more in the scope targets that I have. The first is John Metchie. Eric, I know this is a fan favorite of yours. We finally saw somewhat of a breakout game for Metchie this past week in primetime. 5 for 74 and 18.4 PPR points, 6 targets, 25% target share per route run, and a 14.3% first read rate. That was only behind Tate Dell. And to me, I think like Metchie, he's playing more slot snaps than I thought he would. And I think he could continue that role with Nico Collins even coming back. The Texans, I think they have to find answers in the pass game. And Metchie, early second round pick, who's still just 24 years old, he could be that. So I'm going to add him now, see if he remains on the field over Xavier Hutchinson, who's coming back. Regardless, Tank Dell, Nico still don't have the cleanest bill of health. So, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and take a little investment in John Metchie. Eric, do you think this is sticky at all?
I think it has the potential to be, right. Like I don't think we can bank on the type of performance that we saw on Sunday night in that gut wrenching loss for my Texans. But the point that I want to underscore that you brought up is the role in the offense, right? You know, people tend to think of Tank Dell as the de facto slot receiver, largely because of his stature, right? Typically those guys line up in the slot. But even when this offense was at full steam, right, back in the glory days when we had Nico and Stephon Diggs out there, we were still only seeing 9, 10, 12 slot snaps for Tank Dell, and John Metchie over the last 2 weeks has led the Texans in slot snaps. So if that trend holds and he becomes the slot receiver, he's going to see a ton of favorable matchups. And while he's probably not going to have the volume that you want out of a top flight receiver, he's gonna bring some upside in this offense that is going to be much, much better when Nico returns.
Last in the scope target for you, super deep one, Kayshon Boutte, wide receiver, New England Patriots, 6 targets in 3 straight games. If you want to get frisky, this guy's averaging 6.7 fantasy points per game in that stretch. Ran 96 and 90% of the snaps the past 2 weeks. They like him. At one point, back in his LSU days, like this guy was supposed to be the next one, right? Like there was Justin Jefferson, there's Jamar Chase. You know, you had your classic guy would always be a little bit of a letdown, the tertiary option in there, aka Terrace Marshall. But Boutte was supposed to be the next one. He never really was. How do you feel about him in New England here, Will? Do you think he could be maybe a guy that's worth rostering in some 14-team leagues? I think he should be on dynasty benches as well. They seem to like him a lot, and he did have a high upside one point in his career.
No, I can't get excited about any Patriots receivers. I've seen the 6 targets over the past 3 weeks. It's easy to get excited about Pop Douglas a few weeks ago, and I feel like it just goes everywhere. The matchups are pretty rough too, in my opinion, but there's not a Patriot even in the backfield that I'm like too excited about. I mean, this has have to be a really, really deep league for me to go with this.
I'm running Drake May out there in a couple leagues this week, boy. I'm rolling out Drake May. Eric, do you have any more hope for this wide receiving core in New England, this offense in general, now that May, starting to show some light? That's a tough Bears defense he played this past Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, the offense on the whole, I think it's fair to be more bullish about, right? And specifically, May as like a fringy QB2 fantasy asset, sure, right? A lot of that has to do with his work on the ground that we covered a few weeks back.
Hell yeah.
To Will's point, right? Like, yes, the high tide will raise all ships, but we're not seeing particularly well consolidated target tree, right? Like it's just kind of every week, 1 week it's Hunter Henry, and then it's Boutte, and then it's Pop Douglas, and then it's Polk, right? And it's like it's just I think we're gonna see a lot of this this kind of peanut butter spread distribution to where it's hard to trust any of them. I'm open to the idea of that changing, right? But we haven't seen it yet. So to go out and pick one of them over any of the others would feel like you're just kind of guessing at this point.
All right, man. I'm gonna keep trying to make him a thing. I'm gonna keep trying to make him a thing. Don't you? I'm coming back to this episode. I'm gonna tag it. I'm gonna send it to Will.
I'm just glad we found a way to weave in a Terrace Marshall reference.
Yeah,
didn't have that on my bingo card. That was my deep guy in Dynasty when he came out.
Can anyone guess where Terrace Marshall is playing now? I remember he was on the move, but I don't remember
San Francisco.
Okay.
Was last time I got an update, but I think he was on their practice squad.
Kyle, let us know in the chat. Do some research for us, my friend. Where's Terrace Marshall playing? I'm curious. Talk about a guy I was a little high on. I was taking him early second round in a lot of dynasty leagues that year. So You never live and learn with me. But let's go ahead and turn the page. Let's get to the good people's questions in from the forum.
If you're up, stuck, think about what to do. Here in between, we got advice for you. Back and forth all day, trying to pick the play. Let's hear what them boys here had to say. Presented by the Fantasy Football Advice Network.
All right, so I've seen everyone going to this like blue sky thing again. Everyone's trying to make that a thing again. And listen, if you're all pissed off at Elon or Twitter or whatever, if you don't like what's going on over there on X, go over to the Fantasy Football Advice Network, guys. Check it out, fantasyfootballadvice.com. It's one of the sickest places right now if you want just some good fantasy football content. If you're tired of all the bullshit on X, I get it. It can be overwhelming at times. fantasyfootballadvice.com. There's also the Fantasy Sports Advice Network app as well. You can get over there, talk to other fantasy football enthusiasts, content creators. You can also monetize your content on that platform. Please check it out. It's fantasyfootballadvice.com. Great shit happening. What's with Blue Sky? Why is everyone trying to make that a thing now? What's going on? That's like, you're on Blue Sky, Will? You on Blue Sky?
I do not know what that is, to be honest. No.
It's like this alternative Twitter that like a year. Remember when Threads was happening? Everyone's like, oh, I got to get a Threads account. And then there was Blue Sky. And everyone's back to making that a thing. Eric, you on the Sky?
I'm on the Blue Sky. I'm on Threads. I am an equal opportunity shit poster. Anywhere you want to read my bullshit takes, I'm happy to put them out there. I can say categorically that the user experience of Twitter has gotten exponentially worse since Elon Musk bought the business. But I mean, if you've hung into this point, like you've already waded through the muck and mire for 2 or 3 years, right? Like nothing's really changed about what it's like to be on Twitter in the last couple of weeks. But broadly, anywhere that someone wants to hear my stupid thoughts, I'm happy to give it to them.
Including the Fantasy Football Advice Network. How do people have fucking time? How do people have time to use all these? I only got fucking time for one. Like I had to delete TikTok 2 years ago because too much of a hole for me.
Spoiler alert: if you follow me on one, you're getting the same shit on the rest of them.
Do you have like a program that you can post them all at the same time, or you just copy post? Copy post. OG. Yeah. Okay. All right. Kyle, by the way, Terrace Marshall, last seen on the Raiders practice squad as of October 22nd.
Shout out, dude. He would be. Ooh, they need to get him out there.
Yeah, honestly.
What are you doing, Raiders? Give the kid a chance.
Let's get to Meet the Goats question. Hey, trade question. Trade Scary Terry and J.K. Dobbins for Cooper Kupp and Nick Chubb. Okay. All right. No, I don't think I'm doing this. Will, are you here yet?
No. I just went through my receiver rankings, and Terry and Kupp are not very far apart from each other at this point for me. And definitely, even though JK, Dobbin or Gus Edwards is back, I still think he has significantly more upside than Chubb. I wouldn't do that.
Eric?
Yeah, pretty similar take, right? And honestly, it's one of those where like if one side doesn't really jump out when I read it, it feels like you're just kind of trading because you're bored, right? Because the trade deadline's coming up and you got to do something, which is not the case, right? That's usually leads to bad decisions. So, for me, Terry Kupp comparable. I am very worried about J.K. Dobbins going forward, right? Like he's really looked gassed out over the last couple of weeks. Even without Gus Edwards returning, but Nick Chubb, I mean, he's looked gassed out since he came back a few weeks ago, right? I think he's averaging like 2.5 yards per attempt, right? So he's not the one to solve your J.K. Dobbins problem.
Here's the thing. I'm not trading away Commanders offensive pieces and Chargers offensive pieces when they both look good right now and the Browns look shaky. The Rams are hit or miss at times. So, yeah.
Dude, I don't know how you're putting the Chargers offense in the same conversation as the Commanders.
Dude, the Chargers are starting to fucking put it together. They're starting to let
Chargers are a
they're starting to let Herbo uncork it a little bit.
But those offenses are in two entirely.
I'm just saying. But like, if you were to rank offenses, I want to get invested in out of these four. Definitely Commanders one, and then you could argue two or three Chargers and Rams at this point. I think probably still the Rams because they're going to have more passing volume, but efficiency wise, like fucking Chargers, man, fucking sending it. Fizzle, L, Fizzle, ill, Fizzle, ill, Fizzle, ill. Fizzle. There we go. Fizzle, what's up, Fizzle? Thanks for tuning in today, man. Yo, what up? Got Cade Auden and Kyler Murray on bye. So my option is Jake Ferguson or Mike Gesicki this week, and May or Winston. Listen, dog, I'm rolling out Drake May in several 1-quarterback leagues. I think he has the higher floor. Winston might have a little bit higher of an upside. But I think I would roll with May here. How do you feel about that, Will, or Ferg and Gesicki as well?
Yeah, Winston's against the Saints, who have been pretty decent against fantasy quarterbacks. And May's been balling lately, and the Rams aren't bad. They're kind of middle of the pack. So I'm trusting the legs of Drake May on that one. And it's hard to trust a Cowboys player over a Bengals player, even though you can't trust Gesicki. But here's the thing, right? Last week he was expected to pop off, and obviously it's fantasy football, so he doesn't do shit. So it's going to be quiet this week, and this is probably the week he'll do something.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. Gesicki's been hard to play at times, but because he does have explosives games, and then he has literal duds. But yeah, I'm Gesicki here on the tight end as well. Erica, are you joining us here? Gesicki and May.
I am. Yeah, I'm a bit more bullish on Winston's matchup against the Saints. Right. They've been kind of hot and cold against quarterbacks on the year, but now that Marshawn Lattimore is out the door, they've got nothing but a bunch of turnstiles in their secondary. So Cleveland should be able to move the ball through the air. Whether or not they'll need to in order to beat this Saints team is a different question altogether. But ultimately, getting the contribution on the ground out of May is what's going to split the tie. And Gesicki, for as disappointing of a week it was, right? He scored 7 points, 4 for 30. He had 9 targets last week.
Yeah,
right? So
that's what you.
If he's going to get that kind of target volume, on a regular basis, he's going to be putting up far more than 7 points. Typically,
it could come down a little bit if we do see T. Higgins out there, but who knows if we do at this point. And yeah, I want to be invested within that Cincinnati Bengals offense if I can be. Thanks for the question, Fazil. Hope you're subscribed to the channel, man. Hope you come back, hang out with us again. Daco, I traded Hurts, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Najee Harris for Achane, Aaron Jones, and Deebo Samuel. 8-man PPR league. He has Burrow on his team. What do you think? He also has Love for Burrow's bye week. I mean, I don't hate it, but I think the best player in this is Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think the second best player is H. I think you gave up 2 of the 3 best players. I think you gave up Hurts and St. Brown, which I don't love. And I like Najee down the stretch. Like Aaron Jones and Deebo have both been really big injury question marks so far this season. Eric, do you feel differently?
I feel differently in so much as I am not a fan of this trade whatsoever, especially in the context of it being an 8-person league, right? Like we talk about it all the time. The smaller your league, the greater the emphasis there is on these, on the increments between QB3 and QB1. Right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
You sent out a guy that is very likely to finish as QB1, if not QB2. So you're giving up that edge. Same thing with Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? A guy that, if all things go well, can be a difference maker at the position in this short league. I don't think you created your team out or anything, right? It's not a deal that I would take specifically in the context of an 8-person league, right? We're talking 12, 14. I think you can make a defendable case on either side of it.
Will, do you like this trade?
I don't mind it, but I've never played in an 8-man, so I definitely understand that having a Jalen Hurts is a pretty big deal with how little teams there are. I can't imagine Najee Harris in an 8-man league is very valuable whatsoever. I would kind of like to see the rest of the roster because Burrow has an extremely high ceiling as well. So being able to flipping St. Brown or flipping Najee for those two top 15 running backs, Achane's probably top 5. And I think Debo right now is a really good buy low. I mean, it's not like this is a Monra from last year where he's an easy 18 to
True.
25 a game. I think Debo, if he can start staying healthy for the rest of the year, we know what his ceiling can be. I personally don't mind it, but I also, it's hard to look at it without the rest of the roster and me never playing in an 8-man.
Daco saying, to give some extra context, the guy he traded with isn't making playoffs and he won't play him again. Well, that's at least good. Yeah, it's a tough one, man. That's a tough one. I don't think Eric and I love it a ton. Will's okay with it, but it is tough. It was 8-man, so that's a tough one. I haven't played in those in a long time too, but those were very fun back in the day when I did play in them. He does have Mixon, Montgomery, Flowers, and Wilson. Yeah, I can see why you might want a little more help there. I can see that for sure. I mean, you got good running backs, though. You have really good running backs, so I don't know. Why are you trading for running backs, though? Right? Like, why are you trading for running backs? Why are you trading away St. Brown if Flowers and Wilson are your best receivers? I don't know. I don't know, Daco. I don't know, brother. I don't know. We appreciate hanging out either way. Eli, the Reaper, pick up Dolphins defense this week. He has the Steelers, but he doesn't know how he feels about the matchup this week. And I'm playing the number 1 squad in my league. We got a freaking huge one, an absolute huge one in Acrisure Stadium against the Ravens. They come to town. Are you playing them, Eric, or are you pivoting the Dolphins defense, which is taking form a little bit better as of late? They're playing the Raiders.
I would start the Dolphins here, right? I am a big proponent of streaming defenses as it is. And the matchup against the Raiders is fruitful for an opposing defensive and special team. But like you mentioned, the Dolphins are really coming online here over these last few weeks. It's a very talented defense. They've just been kind of sort of flapping in the wind for a little while as seemingly this whole organization was reeling with the Tua fallout. Now he's back. Now they're showing an ability to not only slow opposing offenses, but to create turnovers, which is really the name of the game in how defenses are scored in today's fantasy football landscape.
Will?
Yeah, it's hard to start anybody against the Ravens. Yeah, I don't care if you're the number 1 defense or not. And yeah, Miami, I think, has been a very underrated defense all year. When you're playing without Tua and you're getting your ass kicked in time of possession, your offense can't do anything. You're not going to do anything. And I mean, they did pretty well against the Rams, and then the 2 weeks before that were tough matchups. But I would easily go with Miami over this crumbling Vegas offense.
Okay. Awesome. Make sure you guys are checking out the Fantasy Football Advice Network. Eli, thank you for the question. Also, thank you, Daco, for the new subscriber. Always great to see new faces in. We're live here on the channel every Tuesday night, 9:35 p.m. Eastern time. We also have a variety of other programs, whether you're into NASCAR betting, PGA betting, entertainment betting. We got it all here at IVT, so make sure you guys are sticking around. And we'll go ahead and round out the program here with a little good news. If you are watching on the YouTube version, not the audio version, good news. We got a nice little background of Pittsburgh. That's Kyle's home. Have you guys been to Pittsburgh yet? Will, you been out to the Berg?
Mm-mm.
Eric, you been to the Berg?
I've driven through the Berg, but we didn't stop in.
You stop everywhere. You literally stopped in North Carolina to go to like an adventure, like a whitewater rafting park.
Yeah,
you didn't stop in the Berg.
Dope as shit. Show me where the whitewater rafting center is in Pittsburgh, and I'll make a stop.
Kyle, you can tell him we don't got the whitewater rafting maybe down in Pittsburgh, but we got the Clipper, right? A little Clipper action.
Hey, we got some brown water rapids if you want to kayak in the rivers, man.
3 rivers, all 3. We got the Ohio, the Monongahela, and the Susquehanna all coming together, my friend. Or no, I'm wrong on that. Allegheny, I apologize.
Wow.
I apologize. A lot of rivers.
You've lost your Yinzer card live on air.
Well, I have. I've been living in Eastern PA for the last 3 years. I haven't been down to the point enough. Haven't got some pierogies with the boys at the point enough. So let's go ahead. We're gonna round us out some feel good headlines of the week. Eric, I'm coming to you first. What is your feel good headline of week number 11 of the NFL season?
Man, it's a two-parter for me. One, whenever these interim coaches are placed into a head coaching capacity, somewhat out of nowhere, right, kind of plucked out of obscurity, and we see the inevitable dead cat bounce of their team rallying behind them and firing off a win for their new coach. It's one of the more heartwarming moments for me as an NFL fan. That's what we saw with the Saints for interim head coach Darren Rizzi. But then he got in front of the microphone and he let us know that the first thing he did pregame before his first game as a head coach in the NFL was go and take a dump and clog up the head coaching toilet right before game time. And at that point, it's just like, this dude is so clearly just out there letting it rip, hard on the sleeve, just so authentically himself. You know, we very rarely, I guess, shout out the Saints. We very rarely see these or shout out the Raiders, I should say. We very rarely see these interims ultimately convert into ongoing head coaches. So the fact that he's, kind of embracing the fact that he's here for a good time and not a long time and just out there being himself, like, kudos to the guy. I hope he can rattle off a few more. And if nothing else, he's going to be a good soundbite for the rest of the season.
I mean, get this man some type of high-paying job in this league. I mean, he is excellent on the mic, and like you said, you can always bet on the dead cat bounce a little bit there for teams coming off of the head coach getting fired. So yeah, shout out Darren Rizzi. That was absolutely hilarious. Will, how shitty can these? You would think the toilet in the head coach office would have to be the hardest one to clog, right?
Man, yeah, I props to him. That's the type of shit that gets your locker room behind you. You clog the toilet.
Yeah, fuck yeah. Will, I'm coming to you with our next feel good headline of the week. What do you got for us?
Yeah, so former tackle, most known to me on the Seahawks, but Panthers is the most recent team he was on. But back in 2019, got a $13 million contract, put half of it into Bitcoin, and got a ton of shit at the time. And Bitcoin did not have the value then, but it does now. And he turned that 6.5 million now into 20 million. So props to him, and go ahead and talk your shit, Russell Okung.
Results silence all debates, he says here. I mean, yeah, there are a lot of people. I know a lot of NBA guys, Eric, were also doing this, and Russell Okung, he's talking his greasy shit. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing about it is he caught a lot of heat for it right off the rip, right? And it has been a roller coaster ride, right? In the time period since he demanded that half of his contract was paid in Bitcoin, it spiked up to where it was worth about $15.5 million, and then it bottomed out to where it was worth less than $4 million, and now, at least as of this reporting, floating right around $20 million, right? So in those troughs, that Russell Okung's out there just catching arrows left and right. So now that it's spiking back up, he's got to be feeling pretty good about himself.
Shout out Russell. We appreciate you, buddy. I will go ahead. I will move to my good news of the week, and it is that Xavier Legette is the best thing on the internet, and we need to protect this man at all costs. Since the day he showed up in Carolina, which we cannot understate is a dog shit organization. Charlotte, great city. Great city, great atmosphere down there. Love the Charlotte area. They even got a nice little adventure park, whitewater rafting.
Whitewater Center, my guy.
Yeah, there we go. But he's so easy to root for. He's kind of got this quirky personality, this southern accent. Here was him before the Panthers left for Germany. Here's what Xavier Legette, first round wide receiver for the Panthers, had to say.
I just hope they got some good food. I'm a picky eater, so I just hope they got something I can eat.
They have good chocolate.
I don't eat candy like that.
Well, what are your no-goes? You say you're a picky eater. What are your no-goes?
Yeah, I don't eat seafood. I don't eat peppers and onions and all that. I don't really eat vegetables like this.
What? You eat pizza?
Yeah, and I just started eating asparagus.
Asparagus.
I eat string beans and green peas.
That's not a surprise for some reason. Bacon grease? Do they have to be cooked in bacon grease?
No. That ain't like that.
Pasta?
Yeah, I eat some pasta.
Okay.
Yeah, I eat some pasta.
Chicken, steak, all the regular stuff.
Yeah.
No seafood though?
No, I'm allergic.
Okay, well, we'll give you that one.
All right. So then they leave for Germany. They go to Germany. Panthers get the upset win. And here is Xavier Legette trying some German food.
I had some chicken wings. Do I need to cook it? Let me try. Okay. I like that one.
Right.
Do you had any food since you arrived?
I had some chicken wings. They had a little different taste to them. Like y'all use a different twang of barbecue sauce. Right here, I like it right here. I had some chicken wings.
Okay, gentlemen. Xavier Legette, this guy, I don't really care how his rookie year finishes, Will. This has been one of the best spots, brightest spots for Panthers fans all season.
Yeah. No, I mean every time he gets behind a mic, it's the most fun interview to watch in media. But I think the funniest part was, I don't know if it was a couple weeks ago, they interviewed him like saying, everyone's making fun of like how you talk and how funny it is, and he was like, what? Like I feel like I talk normal. Like, I'm laughing at how he pronounces asparagus and allergic.
Eric, you're from the South, so I'm imagining you see a little more Southern twang than I do on the Reggie. But I mean, not only is his accent insane, but just like the personality, he's not afraid to be himself, kind of like Jamal Williams types of situation right now.
Yeah, 100%. Right. Specifically growing up in the Houston area, right? Like he's got a lot more like Creole in that twang, and that's exactly what you see, especially as you're playing ball further and further out towards that Louisiana state line, right? So definitely played with a ton of guys that had a pretty similar accent. But the thing that you mentioned to underscore is just like he's so authentically himself. He is not worried about getting aggregated, getting clipped, saying the right or the wrong thing, right? Like he's just out there letting it rip. And like there are not enough guys like that in this league. So anytime someone's doing it, I'm always going to embrace it.
Thank you, Xavier. We appreciate the content, brother. It's been a big bright spot for us this season. Potato to round us out. He gave up CD for Mike Evans and Pacheco. Did he win? Eric, what do you think? You like Pacheco, and I don't think you're giving up on Mike Evans anytime soon once he's healthy.
Yeah. Bang, bang, bang. A+, right? Like I would be happy. I would probably be happy trading CD for Mike Evans straight up. So to go out and get Isaiah Pacheco on top of it is just icing.
Will, 1 through 10, what do you grade this trade for potato juice?
9.5. I agree that that might
Nobody's
be low.
Perfect.
That might be low, yeah. Because I agree. I think I rank Mike Evans ahead of CD rest of season, and we talked about it earlier. Pacheco could be coming back right into that Kareem Hunt role as a better Kareem Hunt in his offense. I love it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Potato Juice, for the question, brother. We appreciate it. And thank you, everyone who tuned in tonight. If you are new to the channel, easiest way to support us, subscribe if you're new. Also, come back, hang out with us again. We are here live Tuesday nights, 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. Like this video if you enjoy this type of content. Plus, follow my co-host on Twitter. Kyle is @2Kyle, @2Scott. Kyle, don't be tweeting any ignorant things. He's been hacked in the past. You clean that up over there, Kyle? You clean up your Twitter?
Yeah, it's been fine.
Okay. All right. Kyle's cleaned up the Twitter. Eric is @FantasyNav. Will is @FantasyFortune. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, I believe, as well. And then you're @WillStarlipper NFL on Twitter. Did I get that right, my friend?
Yep.
Awesome. Make sure you guys are connecting with these guys off air. They can help you a shit ton more than I can in your fantasy league. So get after them. We greatly appreciate everyone tuning in. We'll be back here next week. Enjoy week number 11. Until then, keep it in between. Thank you.